dearies, welcome. It's Kelly from the Book of Moons. Thank you for joining me for my second video, which is going to be a sort of frequently asked questions / Q&A kind of thing. So thank you for sending in your questions. A lot of them were kind of on the same topic, just the same question framed a little bit differently. So we don't have a lot of area to cover, so it should move pretty quickly. I'm going to start with the question that was most unexpected, which was, do I have a tattoo? And that makes sense because my first video was about the tattoo tarot. But yeah, no, I don't have a tattoo, and not because I don't like them or wouldn't want one for myself. In fact, a couple of years ago when I turned 50, I wanted to celebrate my 50th with my first tattoo. And yeah, that did not happen because I couldn't figure out what I wanted. I couldn't decide. So yeah, stay tuned. Hopefully I'll remedy that in the near future. But as of right now, I don't. I just thought the artwork was really cool on that deck. So that's why I got it. I had several people ask about how I got started in tarot. And the truth is, I don't remember exactly. It was a long time ago. I was in my mid-teens, I know. And I know my first deck was the Aquarian Tarot. You can see it's well loved and used over the years. But yeah, as a Scorpio, I had always been fascinated by all things dark and spooky and occultish, and got this deck and totally fell in love with it. And I was hooked, and I've been reading cards ever since. So yeah, that's how I got started in tarot. Kind of related to that, people ask me how they can get started in tarot, and that I may cover that in more detail in another video down the road, like tarot journaling exercises and stuff like that. But I do have some specific things I can recommend to get you started. One is to pick a system. You pick it doesn't matter which one it is. It could be Rider-Waite, it could be Marseille, it doesn't really matter, but just pick one and stick with it until you know it well before you start trying to learn other systems. And keep a tarot journal. That's a good way to get started. So once you pick your system, get yourself a journal, and then get some books. Get some books on that system and read as much as you can about it and take notes. What I used to do was to have like a couple of page spread for each card, and every time I read a book or learned something new, I would add it, because although meanings are generally very similar or the same, there are subtle nuances and differences that it's helpful to jot them down as you're reading and learning more and more about the cards. Doing a tarot card a day is, again, another great way to get familiar with the cards and the meanings, and you can add that to your journal as well, because, you know, write down what your first impression of the card was when you picked it. At the end of the day, write down, how did it relate to something in your day? Did it at all, or did it totally not jibe or vibe with your day? So that's a good way to do it. Another fun thing to do is to do fake readings for, like, you do a reading for your pet or a reading for your favorite character on a TV show or something like that. Again, just to get yourself familiar with the cards, and in that sense, you're doing a combination. The way cards talk to each other, it's really good for familiarizing yourself with that. Along a similar vein, you could do something like take index cards and write down different questions on it, like, is this relationship going anywhere? Is this the right career for me? Whatever the question might be, and just have a little stack of those, randomly pick one, and then lay out some cards for it. And that's a good way, again, to sort of just familiarize yourself with various card combinations related to specific questions. So that's a good way to practice as well. So those are just a few things to get you started familiarizing. So yeah, just practice, practice, practice. And I know people don't like hearing that. I don't like hearing it as an artist whenever I'm trying to learn a new skill or want to dip my toe into trying something different. And it's like, how do I get better at this? And people say, you just got to practice, practice, practice. I hate that, but it's true. So anyway, hopefully that will help. Can I talk about how I read? Yes, I mean, it's probably not much different from how other readers read, although some, I think, read more intuitively, like only intuitively, but I don't, that's part of how I read, but it's not the only way I read. I'm not a psychic or a channeler or anything like that. How I read is the foundation is, the springboard point is the traditional meanings of the cards that most people know, are aware of, that I've come to know over my years of study and experience with reading. So that's where I sort of start with a card, but then my own intuition will come into it from there. And imagery is important as well. Different decks have different imagery, so there may be something on a card for a particular deck that strikes me as relevant when I'm doing a reading. And then, of course, context. If a client comes to me for a reading about finances and career, and I get a bunch of cup cards, they don't want to hear me talking about relationship stuff when they're trying to figure out what's going on with finances. So you have to sort of think about the cards in a different context that way. And I always love when that happens in a reading, because it's a great challenge to think outside the box, and how this card, which is traditionally associated with one sort of subject area, can relate to something that's not really its domain. So that's really fun. So that's kind of how I read. It's a combination of a whole bunch of different things. So decks. People ask about my decks a lot. And I'm sorry, because I do have to weed out. I go through and have to delete a lot of comments, because my comment sections for my posts get cluttered up with the same question, people asking me what the deck is. And it was really not about the cards, it's about the reading. But I do always hashtag the deck when I know it. 99% of the time I do. I think I only have one deck where I'm not quite sure what it is, because I picked it up in a charity shop. But so you can always find the deck that I'm using is the first thing hashtagged. Beyond that, I can't tell you where to buy them. I don't sell them. You know, a lot of the decks that I have, I got secondhand, or they were gifted to me, or I got them so long ago I don't remember where I got them from, or they might be out of print. So I can't help you with the where to buy part, but I can at least give you the name. And again, that will be in the hashtag, so you can Google from there, and hopefully you have good luck finding decks that way. Sort of related to that too, do you modify your decks? I get people who ask, you know, your deck looks, I have this deck, but yours looks different from mine. Do you modify your decks? I do, sometimes, not often, but I have modified my decks. I also may have an earlier version or an earlier printing of a deck, like with the Wild Unknown. I have one of the first printings, so, you know, it looks a little bit different than the more recent ones that are out there. And I also like to play around with filters. I like to take cool photos and sort of mess around with the filters. So if my deck looks different from yours, it could have something to do with that as well. So yeah, I think that's all of them. I think I covered everything. Yep. If I missed your question, I'm sorry. Instagram is not the greatest about notifications sometimes. I always respond to comments if I see them and if I get the notification. So if I missed your question, please feel free to ask it again in the comments down below. I am going to plan to do this on a regular basis. I will just wait till I have compiled a bunch of questions, and then we can have a mini Q&A. So yeah, so leave your comments below or questions below, and we'll get to them in the next time that I do this. I was thinking next week I might do a reading for those of you who have birthdays in the month of June. So we'll see how that goes. I thought that might be something fun to try. So we'll give it a shot and see how that works. So anyway, thanks again for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.